Good afternoon and welcome to the Lunchtime series with Kevin, where we add value to people's lives, happening every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday on ebizradio.com. You can catch the Lunchtime series on all major podcast channels, and for our Lunchtime marketing segment, proudly sponsored by and supported by Hollard Insurance, #big ads for small businesses. As per usual, our marketing and communications expert, Craig Page-Lee. Welcome to 2022.
Yeah, gosh,
How are you
Kevin,
doing?
thank you. Yeah, great, thanks. Good to be chatting again. And yeah, well, I can't believe that we're nearly at the end of January already, which is quite unreal. How are you?
Yep.
I know that you had quite an exciting and busy end to 21. You moved house and you were totally inundated with visitors wanting to come and celebrate your new home and life with you.
Yes, to the point where we Eugene was saying again today that he desperately needs a holiday. I'm like, no, I hear you. Like we've just came back from December, and it wasn't really much of a holiday. But yeah, it's been fun, and loving living outside of Joburg. I every time I go back for anything, for any work or any visits, I can't kind of wait to leave the city. It's amazing what living outside a city does to your brain and your anxiety levels. It's quite remarkable.
Yeah, so
But
you're one
Craig,
of those that have fallen not in the great resignation, but the great relocation.
exactly, yes. I would highly recommend it to anyone that's capable of working online. It's quite the brain shift actually.
Fantastic.
Um, but with that, Craig, what are we going to discuss today? As we launch into 22 and, for the Lunchtime Marketing Show, what are we chatting about?
Yeah, Kevin, thanks. Before kicking off the show today, I just really want to do a quick recap for our listeners by mentioning that we had 45 consecutive shows, lunchtime
Wow.
marketing shows last year on ebizradio.com. We covered
Yeah.
a broad range of topics from reviewing trends and predictions in the advertising, media, and communications industry to learning about AI, automation, I should say, VR, AR. We covered the impact of COVID across numerous key industries, specifically those in the beach classification, and obviously we looked at the direct impact on COVID worldwide. We also addressed some key leadership challenges as workforces around the world were moving from being office bound to this work from home situation to now this new hybrid solution. And we ended the year with some really great discussions on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So quite a nice, inclusive, and captive year. And I definitely look forward to sharing many more of those challenging and engaging topics. And I really do hope that we can bring continued value to our listeners throughout the year ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you, Greg. And I just want to add 2 points to your comments. The first to say thank you to Hollard Insurance for the increased exposure and mention during the latter part of 2022. I mean 21. I'm already in the frame here. But the second is to say that we had some credible guests join us on the show, and in each instance we had we were very humbled by the stories and their life's journeys and their paths to success. And I really look forward to so many more engagement on the show, and really learning about it and helping where we can and put it out there and support where we can.
Absolutely, and I know for a fact there'll be some special guest joining our show this year. That's a given.
Absolutely, Craig. So for today, what's happening today?
Okay, as I think as everybody expects at the beginning of a new year, there's an expectation to cover some trends and predictions for the year ahead. So, as such, I want to just start the year by referencing a few really general industry trends that I came across in the past few weeks. And then towards the end of the show, I just want to take a little bit more of a deeper look at some clear expectations for retailers and what consumers are looking for in 2022.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, cool. So, Kevin, I follow David Sable online, and I really appreciate his style and commentary, and thought that referencing some of the content from his Imagine newsletter would be really a perfect start and way to kick the show off this year. So, again, to set some context there, David Sable is the former CEO of Y&R, and for those, again, who are new to the show, Y&R is one of the world's leading global marketing communications companies. David's also a startup coach. He's a global influencer and a successful author, and he's just got a fantastic way of presenting his thoughts in a great storytelling context as well. So, referencing the article titled "We Are the Game Changers and What's Overhyped: My Cloudy Predictions for 2022." It was published on January the 6th this year, and David starts his newsletter with the following question: predictions. Which ones are worth listening to, and which ones are merely options being tossed into the digital wind to boost web traffic and give analytics a sense of importance? You know, you can just already start sensing the wonderful tone and direct nature of David.
Yeah.
But what I really appreciate about his comments is that he clearly states the facts, and he definitely challenges industry nonsense and wordiness. So let's take a look at some of the simplified overviews from these cloudy predictions for 2022. The article starts with a statement: these are my 10 commandments to just get over. Learn them, know them, make them yours, but stop obsessing. And I really love that point. So kicking off with the first is e-commerce. It's growing. It will continue to grow. It's also evolving into a cool local opportunity. Do it big. If your brand or business sells stuff, B2B or B2C, and you're not online, get in or give up.
Oh, wow.
Point two, retail. Exactly. Not all retail is dead. It's alive and well online and in brick and mortar. Everything digital only and always. Every digital only and always company, take note of this, is opening stores or placing products in physical locations, Amazon being one. No, one isn't better than the other. People like choices. The do it big tip here is follow your users and buyers, customers and consumers, not the talking heads.
Yeah.
Point three is experiences. Of course, we all crave experiences, but brands have always been about the experience. What else makes it a brand, Kevin? So some digital virtual reality experiences are or will be immersive, and going into a restaurant with friends is also immersive. The do it big tip there is life is an experience.
Yeah.
Point four, digital first, digital transformation. This has gotten stale and is frankly meaningless, as there's not much left that doesn't have digital in it somewhere. People first needs to be your mantra. The do it big statement there is digital is everything, but remember, not everything is digital.
Yeah.
Cloudy number 5, Bitcoin is here. Get over it. Even nonprofits are learning to accept it, but run from the folk who tell you that it's replacing credit cards in the near future. The do it big statement here is if you speculate, go for it. But if it's your business, make it easy to transact and turn it into other currency as soon as possible for now.
Yeah.
The 6th point here is Bitcoin, at least blockchain, I should say. And blockchain, he references the respective points for Bitcoin. His big takeaway point here is there are many areas of operation where the application of blockchain thinking and technology might make sense for you. It is not replacing the web. Run from those consultants. Do run towards the folk who can help you analyze your needs and know how ledger can help your transactions, inventory, etc. So, you know, important to understand these technologies are here. They're going to get further entrenched, and it's about how we understand the application in our respective businesses. Then commandments 7 and 8, which are really two that I appreciate.
Yes.
NFTs, or the non-fungible tokens. If you think that all there is to them is collectible, head-scratching art whose valuations are manipulated by the unscrupulous, you're partially right. There is way more to them, though, and you are right about the manipulation. The do-it-big tip here is there's huge value in understanding the full potential of NFTs for customer service, ownership of physical items, and more. And if you want marketing success, pay no attention to the usual. So really get to understand what's happening in the NFT space. Point 8, as I said, 7 and 8 are really clear groundbreakers here. Roblox is great. Gucci even managed to sell a virtual handbag on the platform for over 4K, and the real one sells for 3K. And obviously here we're talking about metaverse. But don't get confused by what's real and not, and what might get your agency an award in an industry show versus what will actually create more connections with your real customers. Don't get lost in the digibabble. The big do-it tip here is the metaverse is having another go. You need to understand it. There's huge opportunities to be had, some in gaming, some in plain social connecting. Be there, be aware. It's not replacing life as we know it. Streaming.
Yeah.
Yes, we all watch streaming and content, and no, episodes don't need to be all dumped at once. Movies can also be released theatrically, apologies. Here's do it big tip. Streaming is a method of distribution. How you use it in conjunction with what is called marketing actually talks about all the points we've done. And lastly, and probably the most important, is commandment 10 of these murky commandments, and that is content. And I love this. Yes, it is all content. His do it big tip is advertising is content, always has been, always will be. So is everything on TikTok. So in closing, David advises us to ignore the digibabble again, understand how your business works and how to apply all of the above to ensure your success. His closing statement is, you don't need predictions, just practical application. I don't think you could be more accurate than that though, Kevin, because really the entire spectrum of marketing is at the end of the day, all in the application.
Yeah. Craig, I appreciate that, touching on some of these things, and hopefully throughout the year, we can actually, uncover some of what this is, especially around blockchain, around NFTs. I mean, and people just hear about it, and even the metaverse. We hear about this stuff, but we don't fully understand what it is. But I think what I'm taking away from this is the advice is, do it big. He starts with that "do it big" statement.
Yeah.
And I think if you're not doing it big, just what the hell are you doing?
Exactly. And there's no midway. You're either in it or you're not, and that's really what marketing's about. You can't be one toe in and four out.
So I can see why you appreciate David's say it as it is style, Craig. And I do appreciate how it's able to demystify some of these concepts for us. But while we broadly covered some of the digital and advertising industry predictions, what do you have to share regarding the consumer trends?
Yeah, good question there. So we've touched on a nice juicy intro into tech and some of the drivers behind it. But I came across a really great read on sustainablebrands.com, which, as you know, is an important source for us for most of our environmental and sustainability content, Kevin. The article was titled 5 Consumer Trends That Will Shape How Brands Source and Procure Goods in 2022. It was published around 5th of January. So again, all very, very current commentary that we're making access to today, published by Kate Stritzinger. And the article opens with the following statement. Consumer insights demonstrate the need for brands to make good on their sustainable and human rights claims and make it even easier for shoppers to shop their values. And that's an important piece that we'll come back to a few times in the conversation. But the findings were extracted for the first time I come across the Biennial Fair Trade Consumer Report, and it was conducted by GlobeScan, which is a global strategy and insights consultancy, and it reinforces the fact that consumers are actually looking to make positive impacts in either big or small ways. But definitely every one of them are trying desperately to make an impact in their consumer decision making that benefits sustainability. And the report states that more than half of the respondents confirmed that they actually may have changed their purchase choices within the last year to make a difference on economics, social, environmental, or actual political issues as well, and indicating that people are really increasingly seeing the everyday shopping as an important way to make a difference and actually placing the power back in the hands of consumers. So, and it goes without saying that brands really need to embrace consumers' need and meet the expectations in respect of doing good for both planet and humankind collectively, Kevin. And what's really great is it's a simple and easy report to read, but it documents 5 consumer trends that'll shape, firstly, how brands should back up their claims, secondly, how they should actually source products, and thirdly, how they will make and implement the changes necessary to make good on their claims. Because again, as we covered in some of the issues last year, there's a lot of greenwashing, environmental washing, but really the brands are now going to be held accountable by consumers in very different ways, and that's what the article covers. So the 5 trends are noted as follows. Continued demand for authentic corporate sustainable action. Human rights and fair wage advocacy will go global in scale. And this is really interesting to see how this particular point has risen up the ranks. Point 3 is online shopping for groceries and everyday goods will remain in the new norm. Shoppers look for and support organizations and companies that promote gender equality. And purpose and brand transparency equals customer loyalty. So you can see from these 5 points that it's not just around the sustainable process, production process, distribution process. There's a lot about the people aspects coming into the trends for the year ahead, Kevin, and that's around human rights, fair wage advocacy, and then promoting gender equality. So let's take a quick brief look at each of those trends. Again, starting with 1, the continued demand for authentic corporate sustainability and action. So we know worsening climate change is causing significant weather events globally, Kevin, and consumers are all looking at brands to provide some kind of sustainable source or produced products that won't contribute to the problem any further. The report notices that in excess of 25% consumers say that they always or usually base their purchase on sustainability. And what's interesting here is that it's up from 21% in 2019 survey. So a really big jump, which is great to see. The negative impact, Kevin, is that climate studies predict that by 2050, around the corner, coffee, tea, cocoa will be so severely affected that the production in some parts of the world will actually disappear and cease to exist. And we know what the negative effect will be on farmers in those regions. And I think that really is one of the catalysts in why consumers are focusing so on the human element in 22 beyond. Point 2 is human rights and wage advocacy, which will go global in scale. Many farmers and workers around the world live on, listen to this, less than $2 a day. In 2021, 73% of fair trade shoppers were willing to pay more for a product to ensure that farmers and producers were paid a fair price, specifically up to 35% more per pound for fair trade coffee and 30% more per bar for fair trade chocolate. What's really encouraging here, Kevin, is that the companies are all that are involved in fair trade are all re-examining their supply chains and committing to ensure that workers who directly supply goods and services across the 190 countries supported by fair trade will receive a living wage by 2030. It's 8 years away. Let's hope they can get there a lot quicker, but there's a peg in the ground, and that's the important thing.
Craig, on that point, on the human rights, I wonder how much research or evidence you can actually sort of gather around how this is becoming a trend in the world to a global scale, and how much COVID has affected how we actually do business, right? Because the fact that this is a trend and human rights are being pushed to the foreground and kind of going, no, you have to pay attention to the people on the ground. You have to pay attention to what's happening to your employees, and it's becoming a worldwide conversation. And it's just interesting that this is becoming a trend in 2022, straight after we've had the pandemic to the scale that we've had it.
Yeah, that's a great point you make, and I do believe that there is the synergistic coming together of all of these concepts and challenges that the world has been faced with, and the COVID pandemic has brought a lot of that to the fore. There's no doubt about it. The one thing though is that the issue around farmers, affordability, their wealth and health, wealth, and well-being is really something that's been on the COP agenda for a couple of years, and it definitely was an important aspect this year because the entire environmental aspect is really top of agenda, and an environment, degradation of environment is impacting on the entire living planet, and on the back of that, obviously their rights are possibly being considered more because their voice has been heard more. So definitely a combination of COVID, but very much, I think, a combination of what's happening from a planetary point of view.
And I also, just to add to what you're saying, it's not just a talking point anymore. It's not just something that's in the news. It's literally, from company to company. It's something that people have to start considering. How are you putting your brand out in the world? How is it affecting your footprint? And it's a real life actual thing. I remember previously when we chatted about it often, you get the idea that people still are just talking about the impact, your carbon impact, and how the people in your organizations are being impacted. And I think now, it's a real life actionable thing that needs to happen, and people need to pay attention to it. So I'm really glad that it is, in the foreground, and it's trending.
Yeah, and what's great about that is that every single consumer has the opportunity to drive the direction, as opposed to presidents who poo-poo it and actually say it's a myth. When consumers are hurting the pockets of the companies that are producing, and they happen to be in those big countries where presidents have denied that this issue exists, I think that's the great thing, and that's why it's more understood and actionable, is because it's now frontline. And again, from that point of view, COVID definitely has helped raise awareness of so many more aspects on the planet. And in fact, it plays nicely into point 3 here, Kevin, where online shopping for groceries and everyday goods actually is remaining the new norm. US consumers will increase online purchase in 2022 on the back of COVID. In 2020, the e-commerce sector grew by 32.4%, with a total spend of $791.7 billion US. And that was according to Digital Commerce 360, which is a global leader in e-com and media. And, if you can just think of what 2020, 2021, now we're in 2022, you're sitting close to the trillions in terms of the e-commerce capability. And that value chain is a very long value chain. And definitely it's also one of the areas where potential exploitation has really been brought to the fore. So on the back of these points, let's really hope that living wage, gender equality, et cetera, really all are addressed sooner than 2030. But just going back to the online shopping point, the digitalization obviously makes it easy for shoppers to compare products and learn whether a company's sourcing and manufacturing practices aligns with their values. And that for me is still one of the most exciting aspects that the digital world brings to the fore, because you can make a decision right there in the center of the aisle when you see a brand does not align with your values, and you can move down to the next product who hopefully does. And online retailers also partnering with certifying organizations to help shoppers make those comparisons even easier. For example, Amazon's Climate Pledge Friendly program has aligned with a whole range of products that are available through the platform. And Fairtrade International was one of the very few certifications actually chosen by Amazon to launch the program. So you can see that Amazon is really understanding that they need to take a big step forward in this regard.
Yeah.
Point 4, shoppers look for and support organizations and companies that promote gender equality, as I mentioned earlier. So here, frequent Fairtrade shoppers care more than average shoppers about women's causes, Kevin, which is not surprising given that the female producers worldwide are still fighting for equal rights and opportunities. Even though a large portion of the world's food is believe it or not, found by a woman, a significant gender gap in the agricultural world still remains, leaving female farmers with less access than their male counterparts to the likes of resources, land, information, financing, training, supplies, the important aspects of being successful in the agri world. In addition to that, more women actually start companies, and shoppers can actually start looking for certification to learn where that particular product came from, who actually participated in it, and how they can then start supporting gender equality through a focused effort in buying into those products. And fair trade works to rebalance the gender equality, and the fair trade standards requires all corporate members to vote on how to use the premium funds, often giving women a greater voice in their communities. And there has to be a bias. Until the level playing field is ever apparent, there has to be a bias. And let's just hope that that continues into the future. And the closing point here is one which we talk about quite a bit, and that's purpose. And purpose and brand transparency actually equals customer loyalty. And that's a great equation. So as we know, both consumers want to support brands that are not only taking care of their own teams and suppliers, but also contributing to making the world a better place, Kevin. So interesting study by Zeno Group, which is a global integrated comms agency. They found that consumers are up to 6 times more likely to buy from companies with strong purpose. Now, what brand can afford to miss out on a consumer who's 6 times more likely to engage with your product?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We also learned that 71% of consumers indicate that traceability is very important to them and that they're willing to pay a premium for brands that provide it. And this is something that we spoke about last year, but definitely coming to the fore in more of that actionable ability to make a difference to those brands. And finally, on that point is that companies can actually attract new customers and drive loyalty by developing a transparent supply chain and celebrating how they work to benefit people and environment throughout that entire supply chain. So in closing on these 5 points, Kevin, we learned that more than 75% of consumers familiar with the Fair Trade Organization actually agree that the Fair Trade label makes it much easier to decide if a product is ethically responsible or not. And the study predicts that these trends will continue to gain momentum deep into 2022 as the negative impacts of climate change, as well as the awareness for the need for a fair deal for farmers across the globe becomes more prevalent.
Yeah. Craig, so you also mentioned that we are going to take a deeper look at important report on the next generation of consumer behaviors. What can you share with us in this regard?
Yeah, Kevin, I don't often come across articles by Merkel, but this was quite an interesting one titled Next Generation of Consumer Behaviors, Understanding the Changing Expectations, Interactions and Experiences that actually drive brand engagement. And this report clearly sets out how brands can actually achieve customer experience transformation. And that's what they need to be doing. If you got to stay relevant with your customers, you got to go through this journey of customer experience transformation. So firstly, to put some context for our listeners again, Merkel's a customer database and engagement agency, and it's also known for customer experience and business transformation. And it's actually a business transformation partner to the Fortune 1000 companies. But there's an interesting quote from their website here, which states that Merkel uses data technology and analytics to help the world's best brands make their advertising more addressable, the experiences more personal, and manage relationships over time. And those are really 3 key drivers in the success of any brand.
Yeah.
The report's also a worthwhile read for any marketers interested in customer behavior because it distills the concepts into really easy to understand content, some really great charts, and at the end of each section, there's a good takeaway summary. Conducted in October 2021, the survey focused on 1,000 US consumers from a wide variety of age groups and backgrounds, and it categorized their opinions and feedback into 3 distinct areas, which I actually quite appreciated. So the areas were defined as 1, convenience, to have the methods in which brands seek to make consumers' lives easier, relatability, are brands actually succeeding in connecting personally and emotionally with their customers in a 2-way fashion, not a monologue, it's dialogue, and the responsibility. How important is it that the way that brands conduct themselves within society to the consumers who can actually engage with them. And yeah, what was really great in one of the paragraphs was to read that the role of each of these three components actually played a hugely important part in consumers' loyalty. So if you don't mind, I just want to open by reading the first two paragraphs of the report, because it really sets the context for a lot of what we're going to be covering into the year ahead, particularly around consumer journeys, expectations, brand behavior, etc.
Yeah.
So in this era of constant change, as the avenues and methods of engagement for brands and consumers continue to evolve, a more subtle switch is also taking place. This change revolves around who holds the upper hand in the relationship. For decades, that power belonged to brands. They told shoppers what products were available and where they could find them, and buyers followed accordingly. Customers have become more vocal in their position and how they hold the proverbial cards. Instead of aligning themselves with brands and products they seek, consumers are now expecting brands to adjust to what's important to them. This includes the channel that they engage with, the products that they're interested in, and the ways in which they view the world. The outdated hope of being accepted into a brand's tribe has been replaced by consumers suggesting that brands accompany them in the passenger seat of their journey through life. Brands can either accept the shift, or consumers will find another brand that will. An incredibly powerful two statements, because it really is setting the tone for how brands need to behave for the year ahead, Kevin.
Craig, so what I like most about what you've just read is that the power is really in the hands of the consumer, and that the brands really need to fit into the consumer's journey through life, right? So, and I mean, you mentioned convenience. To me, I'll pay a lot of money for convenience. When something is convenient, I would change brands. I would, convenience for me, it's when you just the fact that you mentioned it, it's like a no-brainer, like that's the most important thing for me when it comes to buying anything.
And
how convenient is it?
Yeah, and particularly as you've moved out of proximity of getting in your car and just driving down to the store a few hundred meters, you're a long way away from infrastructure. So convenience becomes another really important part of your life as well.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I'll give you a simple example. That's the municipality in the Vaal Triangle. When we signed up to our account and we had to sort of say, okay, cool, here's all our details. They send someone to our house to kind of say, hey, welcome to the Vaal, and we were both like going, what the hell? Like Eskom has never, or the municipality's never actually done that. But that simple convenience factor of them coming to the house and speaking to us, and like, it's insane. Convenience, it does a lot for a brand. It does a lot for how consumers actually want to purchase anything, I believe.
But if you look at the three concepts together there, then so from a convenience point of view, they came to your facility, to your home, in a remote, disconnected infrastructure environment. They understood and were able to relate to the fact that that's where you were, and they needed to engage with you in a particular way. And they took the responsibility of ensuring that happened. So the convenience, relatability, and responsibility aspects that we mentioned earlier really came to the fore for you. So that's great to see. But yeah, let's look at those in further detail, and let's actually see what value that can bring to the brands and how that can connect with consumers' lives, Kevin. So beginning with how brands can actually make their lives easier, it's obvious that while COVID-19 pandemic impacted on the on-the-go nature of our lives, consumers don't want to go out of their way to get what they need. And what the report showed is that nearly 50% of consumers said that convenience, while finding products, was very important to them. And 84 said that it was either very or somewhat important. So almost 100% in that instance is just highlighting the fact that convenience is an important decision in brand choice.
Yeah.
Checkout convenience came in second, with 46% of the consumers surveyed stating that it was very important, and 82% stating that it was either very or somewhat important. And then the report considered how a convenient experience in each of those areas actually impacted the overall satisfaction. And the finding was that there was a clear winner at 46%, with checkout coming in at second at 16%. Quite a big difference, but definitely finding products is the clear. If consumers can find the products in the right place, in the right way, at the right time, your brand's in the basket, whether it's a digital basket or in the physical store. That's where it needs to be. So the key takeaway there for convenience is simplicity is key across the customer journey. And if the experience also manages to save consumers money, and even better, yeah. But despite the rise in digital first marketing, many shoppers still believe that the physical stores are the best place for convenience to shine. The second point mentioned was that brands have to go to relate. Consumers want relationships with brands in which they choose to engage in, not in a surface level longevity sense, but on a more of a one-to-one level. Transactions, this is an important one. Transactions can no longer be the center of the brand consumer engagement. And the study noted that 14% of brands actually truly know and understand their consumers. Only 14%, Kevin. 73% of yeah.
Craig, I'm not an expert, but I think that's too low, right?
Yes.
That's really bad.
Yeah. So yeah, reiterate point one there. Consumers want relationships with brands in which they choose to engage. And if the brands are not knowing them and understanding them, they're not going to engage with those brands. Simple as that. 73% of the respondents said that this was slightly or somewhat the case, but nearly every single person surveyed agreed that they place importance on being heard by the brands they connect with. And being heard results in personalized engagements on parts of the brand. And that's what you want. You want to be able to start building those personal relationships and turning that monologue into the dialogue. 74% of the respondents said that they expect brands to respond personally in email, another 42% via web, and followed by text and SMS messaging at 34%. And for me, that was still quite a large percentage. So one of the clear outcomes of the survey was that celebrity endorsement did not yield the same level of reference and buy-in as it previously did. And this was quite a big surprise for me. 33% of respondents said micro and macro celebrity influencers had no importance on their buying motivation, with only 9 saying it was very important. And a key point to understand here, Kevin, is that it was not a generational divide here. The use of celebrities and macro influencers was actually a choice most voted, not at all important in every single one of the generational groups. So when it comes to consumers' money, travel, and food, a higher weight is placed on two-way conversations, not just listening to an influencer through a digital screen. The key takeaway for at least relatability here, Kevin, is that building a relationship where the brand and consumer feels aligned requires honesty, trustworthiness, and greater customer service where consumers are treated as individuals.
Yeah, Craig, it's one of the things in the last 2 years, and especially with doing the show, with you and learning from you and learning, from the importance of marketing and what there is to it. Relationships, building a relationship keeps coming, up as a to the foreground the whole time. And purely based on, the relationships I have built just within my own personal brand. After 2 years, 3 years now, 3 years ago when I started these relationships, I'm still working with this, with a lot of my clients. So yeah, I can't, to me, it's a no-brainer, and I'm kind of going, yeah, you absolutely 100% need to own that relationship and make it, be involved.
If a brand's not leaning in, the consumer's leaning away. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Yep. So the final of those points then, Kevin, for brands to consider is that of responsibility. And again, these are obvious statements that we open with is that recent societal and cultural events have definitely brought many causes to the spotlight. And some instances, brands have stepped up to address these areas. very well, but in many instances not. But I must say the consumers, to a large degree, really have stepped in and understand the importance of responsibility from brands. 27%, only 27% of consumers surveyed don't want brands taking a stance on social matters. And that's really great to see. Interestingly, though, 41% of 41-year-olds and older actually have a problem with brands engaging in social matters, but only 17% of Gen Z and 24% of millennials feel the same. So here you're actually starting to see a bit of a differential coming in from an age group. Above 40, 41 years old, there's a resistance to brands taking a stance. At that younger age group, the Gens and the millennials, they definitely want brands to step in and take that stance. Going back to one of the points you made earlier as well, so here it is, the pandemic has definitely made work treatment a key priority, with 63% stating that treating workers fairly was very important to them, while 62% echoed that statement when it came to brands' ability to keep workers safe. Promoting equality, ethical sourcing and manufacturing, and environmental protection are top of mind themes, with 73% saying that promoting equality was either very or somewhat important, with 72% respondents feeling the same way about supporting local communities, and 71% agreeing about protecting the environment. And you can see the upper spectrum of those three issues that we actually opened the conversation with today are really, really paramount. The key takeaway for responsibility here, Kevin, is that the pandemic is resulted in many, many more people changing careers, jobs, and reevaluating your life very much like you have. But they're also more aware of the work conditions and the efforts that brands are needing to put into making their favorite products. So younger generations want the brands taking a stance on social issues, whether it is related to workers, ethical sourcing, or what impacts on their communities.
Yeah, I can definitely see that the brands have to align with consumers' needs and expectations, and that they constantly need to reevaluate where they stand in this regard. Otherwise, they will be eliminated from the consumer's consideration.
Absolutely, Kevin. There's no doubt about it. So yeah. The trends for 2022 are not much different at the end of the day. We've seen some of this coming in from 2021, but the important thing here is that consumers have just upped the ante on brands needing to lean in, and I mentioned the word lean in earlier, but also that brands are needing to continuously communicate and engage with consumers. And obviously, what's the key enabler? Content, and content is marketing. Content is, as David Sable mentioned earlier.
Absolutely. Craig, so finally, what do we have lined up for next week's show? I think this is a fantastic conversation to kick off the year with. I think, just to consider some of these points, to really understand where you're at as a brand. And I think, this applies to, retailers, and we mentioned retailers, but I think, as a brand itself, you could really learn a lot from these key takeaways. But I mean, from next week, what are we looking forward to?
Yeah, so, we spoke about guests earlier. You made mention to the fact that we've had some really exciting guests on the show last year. We actually going to have our first guest of 2022 join us on the show next week already, Kevin.
Fantastic.
Grace Momo is the founder and CEO of a brand or business, Luxury Exclusives, which is an African platform for African luxury goods. Grace was recently interviewed by Lindy Changu on ebusradio.com's entrepreneur show, Word of Mouth. Really interesting conversation to get to understand the essence of this incredible woman. But we're specifically going to discuss with Grace how she became the very first entrepreneur in South Africa to launch a completely 3D virtual mall. And this is our chance to bring the topic of the metaverse into the show as well, Kevin. And what was really great is I got to spend some time with Grace last week, and from our conversation, I can tell you now we're really in for a good show next week. This woman has incredible vision. She's working with a great team around her and building this virtual mall, and there's such potential behind the work that Grace is involved with.
Amazing. Yeah, I also checked out the actual the virtual mall, so I'm keen to hear more about it and the why and the how and everything. It's going to be lovely. Craig, thank you so much. Guys, that's the Lunchtime Marketing segment happening every Thursday around 12 on ebizradio.com. And you can also catch us on all podcast channels, major podcast channels, if you just click and search for the Lunchtime series. Craig, thank you. Thank you so much for chatting, and thanks for today.
Thank you, Kevin. Look forward to next week with our special guest.
Cheers for now.